So moving on, Poppe Guthrie, she's going to be back here and present her talk here in just a bit. So Poppe, if you're ready, I'll just hand it over to you. Let's welcome Poppe.
Thank you, Shrisha. I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
Here we are. There we go.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. All right, guys, I hope you've had a great day. This is gonna go really, really fast. So I'm sorry, but in advance, but that's what we're gonna do, and that's why I have slides that I'm gonna give to you later. So without further ado, we're gonna talk about my experience incorporating Dual Track Agile into my product teams, and we've been doing this for about a year and a half. It's been an experiment along the way. I've done this with 3 very different projects and teams, and there have been a lot of lessons learned. But before we get into that, I want to give you a history lesson. So let's remind ourselves that design did not start in software. Design has been applied to software, and much like graphic design kind of came out of different fields, architecture came out of different areas. Interaction design, user experience design has all of these different inputs that were designed in different contexts that we're trying to learn from in order to understand how are we going to use the principles that we know of design thinking in this context for software. And so there's many different routes, and we've always been working on a way to fit in to the software development process, which has been adapted through the Agile Manifesto. So I'm sure that all of you are familiar with Agile in some way. The Agile Manifesto was designed in 2001. This is the manifesto, and there are 12 principles. However, this was created in 2001. Software was complex, but it could still be shipped on a disk, right? And it was developed by a pretty monogamous team, right? It was only engineering. There wasn't diversity at all, really, like whether it's women or design or product managers, like things got a lot more complex, and it was really focused on the technical implementation of software design. Sorry if you hear my cat back there saying hello. So we've had this increasing complexity as software development has gone on through time, so that designers and developers are like, we're still working in these processes that have been designed in different contexts with different levels of complexity, with different types of implementation and different ways of working on a thing. And that's, it's kind of not working anymore. So we need a new way, right? Because I hope this hasn't happened to you, but it's happened to me. I felt the pain of being implanted in an agile development team. And, like, why is it painful? You should just be able to work with our team and in our processes. But there's pain, people. It's hard because estimating design work in an agile methodology, even though there are 100 different ways of implementing agile and working agile, estimating it in the agile way is really challenging because the work is so variable and you don't know what you don't know until you're working on it. Because a lot of times these are not well-defined problems. Part of the work is defining it, and how can we point that, right? What's the value of that? People might disagree with me here, but I think using Jira to track my design work is super painful. It just hurts. And what this does, and part of it is because I can't size it down properly. There's a lot of different subtasks involved. There's a lot of different things I need to do. And so it just becomes this big nebulous thing that everyone's like, what are you working on? And then the transparency becomes difficult. And then there's the development team, focused on development work. They're like, you're the designer, do your work, I'll do my work. Why do I need to help you with your work? That's your responsibility. It's not with malicious intent. It's just that this is how we've done it, right? So there's been pain felt there in not always being an equal member of the team or getting the kind of support needed to answer the questions to do the work. I'm sure you've all felt this. Not having enough lead time in design. You're in the middle of a sprint planning workshop and you didn't know what was coming up, whether that's maybe you had to dig and you have to ask every time because there's not a process in place to inform you. And then you're in the sprint planning workshop, development wants to start tomorrow, and you don't have a design, like you can't answer their questions because you haven't been able to do the work to be able to answer the questions. So all of this leads to us feeling like separate teams, and that feels icky. Like, design shouldn't be just a service, not with software development, not with product development. You can't just throw it over the wall and expect, like, I've done the design, it's done. Something always comes up and compromises always have to be made in order to meet the deadline to deliver a working product in the agile way. And so that means we need a new way of working. So design and development work are luckily very different, right? But this took some time to understand what makes them different and how can we work together to understand one another and how can we embrace and support that. So firstly, the size of the work is different. Development tasks are meant to be, appropriately sized. They're equals chunked. And they're designed to be moved through a production pipeline. They're producing software, working software. Design work is not like that. We know that. And it shouldn't be. You're going to have things that you trash. You're going to have big investigations, small investigations, a lot of variable sizes that lead to the value of the work so that you know what it is you're designing and what you're designing for and how to deliver the best result. The flow of the work is very different. Developers, I learned, love taking a task and moving it through the pipeline. Moving it through. Here we go. And it's done. If it goes backward, that's bad, right? Iteration is a part of our process. Doing a churn, going back and forth and reevaluating something and testing and tweaking and doing all these different things is a natural part of the flow of the work, but that can be very uncomfortable to some developers that aren't exposed to that type of thinking or that way of working, and it could be frustrating for them, for you, unnecessarily so, unless you talk about it. And the level of zoom is quite different. Designers are like the astronauts looking at the product world that they're designing for. And even if you're zooming in onto the ground level, that pixel level, there's still systemic changes, there's still systemic consequences of whatever it is you're designing for, because by necessity. And so even if you're designing a screen for this particular task for you, that will translate into several tasks for developers, and that needs to be understood as well. Developers are on the ground, they're building the pieces to ship the software. And we have software architects like doing the back end and thinking about that whole picture as well. Not saying that all development work is not at that particular level of zoom, but traditionally we're zooming in and out at different speeds and at different levels for different purposes. And the ways of validating our work and gaining validation on quality is going to be very different as well. Design-driven research is what we should strive for, and that's going to slow some development processes down. It doesn't have to. If if you're able to say, like, this is like what I need to do in order to know, like, this is my quality testing, right? And then they can focus on their stress testing or their automated testing, as it matters, and you can start to talk about the ways that you're going to understand if the work that you've done is good or not. So design, development, and product cannot be siloed and still function as a team. That's the whole point. Like, we're still, when just adopting an agile methodology, it still tends to be chunked off in different areas of responsibility without like true collaboration, and that's why we have Dual Track Agile. So some things that this is the foundation of Dual Track Agile, and this is from Jeff Patton, who I highly recommend if when you consider adopting this into your team and to your practices. Read Jeff Patton's stuff on Dual Track Agile, maybe take a workshop. It's going to help you a lot. But the foundation is that we have two types of work. Duh. We have discovery work that is meant to build to learn. It doesn't have to be just owned by design. It's the whole team's responsibility to understand that we're researching enough to mitigate risk and to create a pipeline and a backlog so that we can build to earn, so that we can reasonably chunk down whatever it is into sizable tasks and stories to be worked on at a reliable, reasonable pace, and that we can deliver to make to earn for our products and deliver value. So we've talked about these three things. There's two different, like, we have build to earn pipeline, we have a build to learn pipeline, and we have two different kinds of work, which necessitates two kinds of thinking. We still need to keep everything lean and agile, right? Like, I'm not saying ditch the agile manifesto, or that it wasn't, I'm just saying it's incomplete. I'm saying that agile itself alone is not enough to allow us to collaborate effectively, and we still need to keep those principles in mind, and we need more. Embrace the churn of discovery. You embrace it, but the whole team needs to embrace it. The whole team needs to own that discovery work is going to look different, it's going to feel different, and you'll have different levels of involvement at different times depending on your specialization, which is awesome. And as always, measure and learn after you ship. We know that, but making the case for that, defining it as a principle and a practice that we're going to do as a part of our team. Once we goes out the door, we will, once it's ready for production, we can do some usability testing. Can we do usability testing in the field, right? Bringing that to the forefront of the conversation. And again, all of this is from Jeff Patton. So getting into how we adopted Dual Track Agile, it follows along those lines, but there were some key things to consider. So the first thing in adopting the Dual Track Agile was just that the recognition that there are two types of work. It seems kind of moot that we would have to state that and recognize it, but once you visualize it in this way and you talk about it, it becomes very clear that these are two different pipelines that are related to one another, and it allows us to be able to collaborate more effectively. Which is the next point, is that we have to prioritize what we're working on in a collaborative way. So working with the design lead, the tech lead, your key stakeholders, whether that's your client, your boss, whoever's paying the bills, right? And your product owner, you all need to come together and collaboratively define the opportunities and upcoming priorities. It doesn't fall on one role, because then you lack skin in the game, you lack awareness, and you lack the perspective of the different areas of this cross-functional team. And then you can co-create a product roadmap with clear and distinct design and development phases, so that you can co-create product backlogs. And I do say two backlogs. We'll talk a little bit more on that later. But I believe that there's some necessity in separation in some ways. So then you can gain alignment with that core product team on the work that's going to be brought into the pipeline for both your discovery and your delivery pipelines, so that there are no surprises for anyone and we're all working together in a productive way. So to have a powerful discovery, you really need that pre-work of the product team, of that product planning team, in order to have clear product focus and a healthy backlog of discovery items so that you can appropriately work and plan your time. So that you can have lead time to do the research and validate your ideas, and lead time to, once those are validated, you can refine and prepare them to be collaboratively story workshopped and sprint planning, instead of it being done in a silo and acceptance criteria written without you, or missing expectations and behaviors, or not being able to answer questions because you don't have the designs. You weren't given enough time. And then this is the most critical point, is that development needs to be involved in the discovery work too, because discovery is the whole team's responsibility, not just designs, right? By necessity, we'll be in more of that discovery area, but we can still involve development in the process so that they understand what is to come and can provide very valuable feedback. So inviting them to your research sessions, and then not just inviting them, but encouraging it, and then having a conversation afterwards, like, what insights did you gain? And that can be with anyone. Hopefully you have a way you can do silent observations, and you can have more productive insights and faster research cycle times to deliver more quality products. Involve your developers in design studios, involve your clients in design studios. All of this is a part of your working team. Involve people in story mapping, in your stand-ups. Please go to stand-ups. Don't skip these meetings or these retros. Your stand-up is this critical touch point of you to make people aware of what you're working on, also show that mutual respect, and then you have an opportunity to say, hey Joe, do you have 5 minutes after stand-up so that we can pair on some designs I have in progress? I'd love to get your feedback on technical feasibility of potential solutions. That way they're involved and they don't feel like you're making frivolous decisions. You're involving them in understanding how something might come to be, and you're doing meaningful work together. And then we need to support delivery, right? So again, delivery itself is not just the role of the development team, it's the team's responsibility, right? And so that means you need to be prepared, and we can all story workshop or sprint plan at least one sprint ahead, not like a day before. We like that lead time. And then what we do is, I don't know if you're familiar with domain walkthroughs, but when a development story is pulled and it involves any kind of user touch point, the design team is brought in to talk about expectations and just briefly go over the designs. So, or if there are no designs and it's just some kind of behavior that's happening from the software itself, then you can talk about that as well, an expected behavior. What this allows you to do is to catch things early on so that they're not bigger issues later. Again, go into the stand-ups, mutual respect, encouraging design reviews of work in progress. So pairing before it goes to code review, before it's at a later point in the cycle, or like right before production, when a lot of work has been done and it's difficult to make changes at that time. And then make sure you're doing your post-production testing and refinement. So these are 2 tracks, 1 team. And everyone needs to work together very closely. So not just the PO and the design, but it's PO, design, and tech lead, and your clients. Like, you just have to work really closely together to align on everything. Have separate but visible backlogs. If it's 2 tracks, they have 2 different areas of focus, 2 ways of working, 2 ways of thinking. It makes sense to separate out those priorities for what we want to learn and what we want to build to earn. And that reduces noise and allows for focused delivery of value. Same thing with your work tracking. It can be very challenging to filter out the noise from one versus the other, or like, why is this, like, developers asking, why is this task sitting here for so long? I just want it to move along. You have your own your own backlogs, your own work tracking systems, so that you can hold each other accountable and also jump in or ask questions when necessary. And it gives awareness and involvement in each other's work. So we're by necessity on one side typically, but this is the whole problem solving process. We jump back and forth, and you might spend one time on one side versus another a little bit more. So really, in order to adopt Dual Track Agile, this requires clear and consistent communication and embracing the specializations and differences that we have to offer, so that we can co-create new ways of working together. Because it just feels better to work as a single team towards one goal. All right, thank you.